Hello and welcome to episode 188 of our SAP on Azure video podcast. Today is April 5th, and together with Robert and Goran, we are here to talk about anything related to SAP and Microsoft. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
It's always DNS. Who doesn't know this term when it comes to networking issues? In a lot of cases, we see customers using Azure DNS services in the context of hybrid networking with SAP scenarios, both Azure native and RISE with SAP. Since this can become quite complicated, I'm really happy to have two experts with us today, Evren and Konstantin. Both have been on the show before, but now we'll dive deep again into the topics of DNS. And again, both of them are experts in this area, so I'm sure we will learn a lot. Before we go into the topic, Evren, Konstantin, can you quickly introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm really very happy to be here in this podcast, hosted by Holger and Goran. So I think that this is my fifth time I'm appearing here in this podcast. I'm really very happy to be here. So my name is Evren Buyruk. I'm a principal cloud solution architect from Microsoft International Customer Success Unit. And then basically my focus area is application modernization around infrastructure and also security. I also have another role within Microsoft that I am one of the technical leads for SAP on Azure connected communities. So what we basically do, we bring resources over to our venue and let them talk about their technologies to educate cloud solution architects and cloud account executives around Azure solutions.
And it's a pretty big community in the meantime. Yeah, no, and Evren, I think in the meantime you really grew this community quite a bit. So it's a fairly large community now within Microsoft that you created.
We actually just did around 55 sessions so far, and since we have started, and then our audience is growing. Basically, we have like 98.5% retention. It means that like people stay in the call and then they ask questions, they respond to the polls, and then they vote for the upcoming sessions. It's actually really growing very fast, and then people want to learn around what we do with SAP on Azure.
Really great.
Cool.
Konstantin.
I think that's my turn now. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Konstantin Popov. I'm a technology lead in EMEA region, looking after strategic S500 accounts and global accounts. And my primarily focus is everything related to SAP on Microsoft Cloud from the technical point of view, and also Azure core services like networking and security. And thanks for having me a second time already on the show. And the first time when I presented together with Evren was about the DNS integration in the hybrid cloud scenario for SAP deployments, focusing on Microsoft Azure. And as you rightly mentioned, so this time we are going to do a recap, a really quick recap about what we addressed in the first version of the white paper, and also we will highlight what's new in the second version. So thanks for having me once again, and super excited to be here as well.
No, cool. It's really great. And as you mentioned, some time ago you published a really extensive white paper on LinkedIn, and I think a lot of our listeners, viewers have already looked at this. We'll again put the link in the show notes so that everyone can take it. But I think this is a very extensive guide where you have lots of information on DNS in the context of SAP and Microsoft.
Exactly. So this white paper is as long as 19 pages. I'm not really sure that all of our listeners read it from top to down, but it doesn't represent or copy and paste all the information from our documentation. It really focuses on the cloud hybrid integration between on-premise, third-party solutions, and SAP running on Microsoft Cloud. And also in the recent second version, in the context of how to integrate with SAP RISE proposition, because SAP RISE becomes more and more popular across our enterprise accounts and all small and medium accounts across the globe. And I think this is a very hot topic. And we thought together with Evren that we need to address it, and we need to highlight and to provide some diagrams that people can just quickly go into the white paper, into the article, and get their first understanding about how it works and what the key components are.
Yeah. Cool. So should we take a look at it and then?
Absolutely. Then I will start my screen sharing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, perfect.
Okay, you can see it now.
Yes.
Cool. All right. First, as you, Holger, mentioned that I wanted to show you how to reach out to this white paper and article and how you can download it. So the link will be published in the video description, and once you reach out to LinkedIn, you will see this this featured article. And you can open it in the full screen mode. Once you're in this full screen mode, there is an top right download button, because I just experienced a lot of questions when people ask me about it's cool that you have this PDF on LinkedIn, but how can I download it? So this is the way how you can download it PDFs from LinkedIn. Just open it up in the full screen mode and go to the top right. You will find the download button. Okay, I have it downloaded already. Let me just open the PDF, and I will walk you through this white paper, and we'll quickly address the content. We'll quickly highlight what Azure DNS service is, what capabilities it provides, and also the scenarios what we have put together with Evren about integration and deployment on Microsoft Cloud and Azure. Cool. Once you scroll here, you will find the table of content. So I just briefly explained it. We have in the second part of the white paper different integration scenarios. Currently, we covered 4 scenarios, and those scenarios could be extended dependent on particular customer requirements, particular customer complexity and integration between the different cloud providers and between the on-premise and their deployments in the cloud. Okay, so this is the first mandatory disclaimer, then the introduction, and the introduction, most people can skip it, but still it gives a good understanding what was about the intention of writing this article, about why it is important to consider DNS architecture and design before deploying any systems, especially SAP systems in the cloud. Because DNS was invented, I don't know, 30, 40 years ago, and it's still a very crucial component. And since that time, DNS didn't change significantly compared to other services, IT services, and cloud infrastructure like AI, like Kubernetes, and whatsoever. It's still very basic component and very relevant for all type of workloads and all type of deployments. And we all know that SAP is hard for a lot of businesses, a lot of enterprises across the globe, and DNS plays a crucial component into inter-system communication. And also it plays a crucial component into security. So therefore, even there might be scenarios when all the high availability deployments and disaster recovery solutions are deployed and everything is very well protected and secure and reliable. But if a small tiny component like DNS, and it could be running on a small virtual machine, is not working, is not achievable, then it might be a big problem. And so this is why we describe in introduction section why it is important to consider and how to look at it when designing your future cloud or hybrid deployment.
Yeah, actually, the HA topic is not just the SAP component, but everything surrounding, including DNS. So meaning your SAP could be in HA up and running, no problem. DNS is down, you are down. You can't
absolutely
access it, right? So,
exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
So when we talk about SAP deployments on Microsoft Cloud, so then Azure DNS comes into the play. And the next chapter describes Azure DNS overview, capabilities, and limitations. And as a baseline, we wanted to highlight here that we need to distinguish from the technical point of view the Azure DNS from the public facing internet-facing DNS inquiries and Azure Private DNS. Because Azure Public DNS manages records and provides name resolution for internet-facing domains. And we know that SAP systems, mostly NetWeaver systems, they are deployed into the Azure Virtual Networks. Mm-hmm. And within Azure Virtual Networks, we have Azure Private DNS, which is a reliable and secure DNS service to provide DNS name, domain name resolution services. It also supports all common DNS records types and allows different features to integrate with third-party DNS solutions and to make different techniques like conditional forwarding. So this is important to distinguish between Azure Public DNS and Azure Private DNS. And this article is purely focusing on Azure Private DNS and SAP deployments within Azure Virtual Networks. So just to stage. In some of the scenarios, Azure Public DNS works together with Azure Private DNS. For instance, when customers and companies would like to expose some of the functionality of the SAP environments into public internet. So therefore, Azure Public DNS might work together with web application firewall, with load balancers to take the public DNS queries and to forward them to a particular SAP system running within virtual machines. So there are kind of hybrid scenarios when public and private DNS work together. Mm-hmm. As I said, this article is more on the private DNS side. Azure Private DNS, so which provides actually three capabilities to operate and organize DNS resolution services within virtual networks. So the first option is Azure Provided DNS, and customers have to do nothing to get Azure Provided DNS because it comes out of the box. Every single virtual network comes together with Azure Provided DNS. It has a special non-routable IP address of the DNS servers where virtual machines within the VNet can communicate with this private IP address and get resolved internal DNS names to IP addresses. I will show you later some diagrams on how it works. So the second scenario is Azure DNS private zones together with Azure DNS Resolver or without DNS Resolver. And Azure Private DNS zones, what is different, why it's different to Azure Provided DNS. In Azure Provided DNS, customers cannot bring their own domains. For instance, if there is a company which is which is called Contoso, with Azure Provided DNS, customers can do nothing. So it's a standard suffix, what is also provided by Azure, and customers cannot customize it. With Azure Private Zones, customers can bring their own domains into virtual networks and also align those domains to virtual machines and to network interface cards to get DNS queries from this custom DNS. And the Azure DNS Resolver is an option to resolve externally resolve these Azure Private Zones DNS queries from Azure. So I will show you the diagrams later on as well. And the second version of this article, what I'm talking about, so more focusing on the feature of Azure DNS Resolver because it's very handy. It's also a platform provided component by Microsoft. Customers don't need to install any virtual machines, configure DNS services, configure DNS forwarders to achieve the same functionality. It's all out of the box provided by Azure DNS Resolver. And the third option of the Azure Private DNS is custom DNS. And this is the most flexible, the most common used currently solution because For all virtual networks, customers can just specify and configure the IP address of the external DNS servers, what will be handling all the DNS name resolution, including in Azure. So this is for most complicated, for most common scenarios, and for the customers who still want to keep their on-premise DNS infrastructure and also extend this on-premise DNS resolution service into the cloud as well. So this is as simple as to make a configuration in the virtual network to point out to on-premise DNS, and then virtual network will be assigned to the on-premise DNS servers. Okay, Azure Provided DNS I already explained, so customers can do a lot. If the virtual machine is created, for instance, VM1, so it will have a host name of VM1 and also a fully qualified domain name as VM1 plus this internal suffix, which is internal.cloudapp.net. And this suffix is provided by the platform, and customers cannot replace it when leveraging Azure Provided DNS. So it's out-of-the-box solution. So it comes with their benefits that customers don't need to do anything, but from the SAP deployment point of view, so we think that it's only applicable for some sandbox environment, test environment, and training environments, because those kind of environments are very isolated. They are not integrated into third-party solutions, into external systems, or into internet. So therefore, they don't require any inter-system communication, and just for sandbox purposing or testing purposing, it's a perfect fit, because it's with less efforts you can do what is really needed.
And also, I would like to add, Konstantin. So, like this white paper is actually just providing very defined, indicative way to achieve the DNS on Azure. But sometimes some customers, they might actually have different requirements. So like just an example that I was working with a customer that we were trying to set up their InfoSec servers on Azure. So the reason why they were using it is because they just wanted to have the threat aggregation and then the response using InfoSec. So the servers that were in this environment, they needed to resolve the host names of those servers in the customer's DNS zone. So what happened is, we provided the customer to follow the Microsoft best practices, and so that they could attempt to use the Azure, quick start templates to set up a DNS forwarder. However, the customer did not necessarily want to have the DNS forwarder just because of their internal, reasons, compliance reasons. I mean, they didn't necessarily disclose what the reason why they did not, use the DNS forwarder. So then they were asking us as an alternative solution. So because they said they needed to resolve the internal DNS in their cloud tenant, and then they were asking us to recommend them something to breach their on-premises DNS, namespace with the third-party, DDI solutions such as like Infoblox, Blue Cat, etc., so that they can bring their DNS appliance into the virtual network instead of just forwarding the traffic. So DDI, I just use this abbreviation, is actually the short for the integration of DNS, DHCP, and IPAM, which is the IP address management, into a unified service or solution. So customer actually just wanted to have our point of view on what we can provide to them instead of using the forwarder. So basically, what we have done at that time is that we asked them to resolve their on-premises DNS namespace in leveraging the Azure DNS private zone. So basically, when they actually just leverage the private zone, and then they can then forward the traffic to the on-premises servers for resolving those names which are hosted on premises. So the reason why I'm saying it is because that we're going to be flexible when a customer comes to us and says they would like to actually just achieve certain scenarios, like the InfoSec example here. that we are not going to be restricted, or we're not going to push this white paper and say, hey, this is how you need to do. So first, I always just said that in the previous sessions as well, Holger and Goran, when Konstantin and I are working with the customers, what we do is, let's go ahead and just get your environment details first before we actually just tell them something about what they need to do. Because sometimes Azure solution, although it is going to be 100% of the time going to address the customer's requirement, since they have some other commitment to third-party DDI solutions, like I said, anything that they might actually just use it for. So we're not going to be challenging them, and we're not going to tell them, hey, don't use it. I mean, we will be working with them to understand, and then we can position the right approach. Sometimes it might be a combination of many solutions into one to help them achieve their goals. Because as Goran mentioned, that if the DNS is down, the entire SAP system is going to be down. So then there's no point in discussing anything about that, right? Just wanted to add that.
No, perfect. And I, if I understood this correctly, Konstantin also, the Azure Provided DNS is something that theoretically you can also use in production. We're just saying that in a sandbox environment, that's where we typically, or in a training environment, that's where we typically see it in an SAP context. But, and exactly, Evren, what you just said, if it makes sense for a certain customer scenario, then using Azure Provided DNS would also be totally fine in a productive environment. There's nothing that restricts a customer on that we're saying, no, this is a service. Yeah, okay, perfect.
There is no restrictions from the customer, from the platform side to use it in production mode. Only one caveat is that from all of my SAP experience, I see that customers would like to bring their own custom domains.
I fully agree.
Custom domains. So therefore, from the experience point of view, we are covering in this white paper as well that we just see it that customers, there is no restriction to use it in production, but in my life, I haven't seen a lot of examples that it was used for production environment, because it doesn't allow cross-system communication with the custom domain. It doesn't allow to provide certificates on the custom domain, and so on and so forth. So that's the whole list of different constraints and limitations, what you can find here as well, that just kind of not suitable for production environment, but still can be used.
Okay.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So therefore, Microsoft came up with a more elegant solution, which everyone just explained. And this is the second option, is to leverage Azure DNS private zones. And with private zones, customers can bring their own custom domains into the VNet. And actually, technically, there is still Azure Provided DNS behind the scene running in every single VNet. What Azure Private DNS Zone actually does, it adds additional layer and allows customers to provide their own DNS and assign those DNS to a private zone. And this is how it works. So mainly the diagram is almost the same, but instead of the platform provided suffix, customers can provide their own suffix like contoso.com. And if this particular VNet is linked to a DNS private zone for the registration purposes, and this DNS private zone has a domain which is contoso.com, that all virtual machines created in this particular VNet will be automatically registered in the DNS private zone together with a fully qualified domain name. And here is an example. If a customer creates a VM2, in the portal, or using Terraform or Bicep or ARM, any kind of technologies to create a virtual machine, and they provide a name for the virtual machine VM2, it will be and this virtual network is linked to DNS private zone for registration purposes. So then this virtual machine will receive a fully qualified domain name of vm2.contoso.com. And you see here on the diagram that multiple virtual networks can be linked to one private DNS private zone for registration purposes. So that means that virtual machines created in this VNet and that VNet and any VNet, so linked to the DNS private zone, will receive all the suffix of cantoso.com. So they might have different IP addresses, and obviously customers would like to kind of make a VNet peering. So this ultimately means that IP addresses should be different and not overlapping in the virtual networks, but the FQDN and the suffix, DNS suffix, will be the same. And this provides already a foundation for cross-system communication, because we know that from the SAP context, due to security reasons and operations reasons, customers very often distribute non-production workloads to the different VNets, to the different subnets, to segregate between non-production and production workloads because of the different reasons.
Yeah.
So but linking those different virtual networks into one DNS private zone so allows to establish already communication between the virtual machines on the DNS level. So I hope it makes sense.
Yeah.
And for the first version of this article only had this conclusion, but as we are talking about the second version and new features, what Microsoft released already a few months ago, and this one of the features is DNS Private Resolver. What this Private Resolver does, I will show you the diagram directly. So this DNS Private Resolver is located in a virtual machine, in a virtual network, and it allows to resolve DNS private zones which are in the spoke VNets or living in the Azure platform in the virtual networks from outside, from on premises, and this allows to resolve DNS names from on premise, but DNS names which are in the cloud. And previously, before Azure DNS private resolver, so customers, in order to do this, had to deploy different DNS forwarders, because this Azure Provided DNS, which exists in every single VNet, and it has non-routable IP. So simply, DNS queries from on-premise could not be sent to the Azure Provided DNS for the private zone resolution. So therefore, customers had to deploy previously here in every VNet some DNS forwarder, and then forward DNS queries from on-premise service to the forwarder. Then this forwarder, which lives already in the VNet, will be able to resolve Azure internal provided DNS and then make the DNS resolution and send the query back. So with Azure DNS Private Resolver, this headache is gone. So this does the trick of DNS resolution out of the box. So then all the DNS queries which are coming from on-premise to Azure and which would like to resolve DNS private zones, so they will be terminated on the inbound interface query of this private zone. Then this private resolver will reach out to internal DNS, will resolve the IP address and send the query back. The same applies for outbound DNS queries when systems, for instance, SAP systems would like to resolve on-premise queries. So with the conditional forwarding and with the query, with the outbound query, so this request will be just sent to on-premise DNS through DNS Private Resolver. And this allows to set up the foundation of the hybrid communication and hybrid DNS resolution across on-premise and private zones with custom domains in Azure. So this might sound a little bit complicated, but people who are really deep in the DNS and features like forwarding and zone transferring and conditional forwarding, so this really makes a lot of sense. And this established the foundation, as I said, onto DNS name resolution across hybrid environments.
Okay.
So I have one question. I mean, this is great to see that many of those services around the SAP which we need are becoming cloud services. You know, initially when we started, DNS was okay, you deploy, you could use from the on-premise, or maybe you extend it or add it to as a part of the VM, which is running Windows or Linux services, which is doing the DNS, which you need to manage it, and here's a cloud service. I have one question. So, do you know on a Windows, typically they would use Active Directory. They have to use it because of those users, domain users. Generally speaking, DNS can be installed as well on a Windows as well as a part of the Active Directory. So how would that two things on the Windows itself work here? If they would say, okay, we use Active Directory and we would maybe love to use the Azure DNS in private zones.
Yeah, so it's actually for a single virtual network, it's quite simple. It's either or. It's either Azure Provided DNS, it's either Azure Private Zone or custom DNS. And custom DNS actually stands that for this particular virtual network, the DNS server is somewhere outside. Or even within this particular network, but you just need to specify the IP address of the DNS server which is taking care of this virtual machine. That's all.
Okay, either or. All right.
Yes.
Yeah. So if from the security point of view, like customers are asking about the data residency with the private resolver. Some customers are saying that, hey, where's my data going to be if I actually just use the service? Because this is a cloud service right now, right? So then they say, is this going to be moving my data, or is this going to store my customers' data out of the region where the resolver is deployed? The answer to that is no. So basically, we will be whatever that we use, custom zone, custom forwarding or custom DNS. We are still going to be actually just keeping the data in the region where the service is deployed. As it is a fully managed, it is going to be built-in high availability, zone redundancy. There's going to be also providing them with the cost reduction, like they will be reducing their operating costs and they will be able to run at a fraction of the cost actually. So they will have the private access to their private DNS zones. And then if they want, they can conditional forward to and from the on-premises. And then it is just going to give them the flexibility if they want to use additional like IAM, identity access management solution, and then they can actually just be more granular actually to have who's making this forwards and who's making this enablement of the resolvers. So they can actually just focus on the scalability, and then they can go ahead and just expand into it. Plus, they can also aggregate the solution via the DevOps team of the customer. Basically, they can build their pipeline with Terraform. They can do the ARMs, and they can do Bicep if they want. They can go ahead and just deploy that, and then they can grow. So anything that is going to be on top about the identity access management solution, who's going to be who's going to actually just make sure the data is not going to move the regions where the service is deployed, is going to be encapsulated within the service. So Microsoft is going to guarantee that as long as you're using the Azure DNS private resolver, this is not going to move or store the customer's data outside the region. So it actually is encompassing the overall security aspect of the DNS. And then as customers are, focusing on how Microsoft does this from, security point of view, and then we make sure that they understand that the data is not going to move. So anything that you're going to be putting on top, even with the, layer 3, layer 7 solutions, is going to be like a cherry on a pie. So that's going to be actually augmenting the security even more.
Yes, thank you, Evren. And one more time to emphasize that this is all the private access, so it doesn't involve any internet communication. It works only on the private virtual networks, and also with an express route or VPN connectivity to on-premises. So that's all. And
also, Konstantin, while we're actually talking about this actually just makes me even think more about some scenario-based implementations. Maybe in another episode, we can actually go a little bit granular, right? And then we identify maybe 5 or 10 customer scenarios, and we can give some examples aligning with everything
that would be also nice. Yeah.
Yeah, aligning with everything Konstantin actually just mentions meticulously.
Yeah,
we can do that.
Absolutely. We started it already with some of the scenarios which we are going to talk in a few minutes. Just let me finish up about the third option of the Azure DNS, which is a custom DNS. And this is going to your point. So when customers would like to continue with their own DNS or would like to deploy additional ADDS services based on Windows inside Hub VNet or inside Spoke VNet. So this is the way to go for this. So just deploy a virtual network and configure 2 IP addresses for the primary and secondary DNS wherever they're located. And it's only then down to networking communication and networking routing on how this virtual network is connected to those DNS servers, to those DNS servers and the IP addresses what are specified in the configuration. That's all about it. And these are some diagrams, people can read them. And then let's talk about some DNS integration scenarios. And the first one, which is very obvious and leveraging the most from the platform provided solution, is to leverage Azure Provided DNS or Azure Private Zones. So then the first option, what is explained here, so this was inherited from the first version of this white paper and article when there oh, sorry, I mixed it up. So the option 1 is actually is an update from the second version. So this is leveraging Azure Private Resolver, which is a preferred scenario right now, and which is a recommended option for any production environments or any native deployments for SAP on Azure. And here we see the diagram, and this diagram already contains some reference architecture components like some hub and spoke networking architecture, because we recommend it from our cloud architecture framework, and most of the customers leverage this, and most of the customers deploy their SAP systems in separate spoke VNet or VNets. So therefore, Hub VNet is configured using Hub VNet is connected to Spoke VNet using VNet peering, and in the Hub VNet we have a DNS private resolver. So therefore, SAP systems which are deployed in the Spoke VNet, they're connected to one of the private zones. So they will get their suffix of contoso.com, and any communication or any DNS queries from on-prem or from other Spoke VNets will be running through DNS private resolver and DNS private zones to actually resolve sap.contoso.com to any IP addresses behind any virtual machine. So this is the preferred way. The second option is the obsolete scenario. Let's call it this way, by leveraging DNS forwarders. So that was before, and this DNS forwarder is actually representing the version of private resolver. But previously, customers had to deploy this DNS forwarder as a virtual machine, so then configure inbound and outbound DNS queries, and also connectivity to internal Azure Provided DNS and all the conditional forwarding. That was kind of a hassle and a headache to configure this DNS forwarder. So therefore, we released it, and Microsoft released it as a private resolver, and all of this configuration is now gone. Okay, so one of the common scenarios is that customers still leverage is custom DNS, as we provided, especially some complicated and complex environments where customers have multi-regional, multi-networking DNS resolution, complex architecture. So customers would like to keep their already made investments in the DNS, what they did in on-prem, and extend this on-prem DNS into the cloud. So, and some customers just move some workloads into the cloud, so therefore it becomes a complicated hybrid scenario. Some customers just deploy new SAP systems in the cloud and still run their data centers on premise for some non-SAP environments. So this is all about hybrid connectivity, and this is the most simple way on how to keep the investments made into on-premise DNS and to be able to resolve cloud DNS names from on-premise services. So this is the custom DNS where all of these or some of these virtual VNets are configured as custom DNS, and they are pointing out to on-premise DNS services. So therefore, all DNS queries will be taken over and taken care by on-premise DNS.
From the field perspective, Konstantin, I want to add that customers, they actually have two use cases for custom DNS servers. Basically, one of them is the root hints only. So this is actually a scenario. Some customers are using it because they point to the root hints is not necessarily always efficient to resolve the internet names. Some customers still just want to use that. Basically, when the customer actually just comes to us and say, we would like to use the root hints. So our recommendation here is to have Azure Provided DNS set as the forwarder, and then the resolution will be, exactly the same with what they are trying to just achieve with the root hints only. So the other one is Konstantin mentioned it as the DNS service as forwarders using the custom DNS servers. Basically, this is pretty much like, I will say 90-95% of customers leverage it. So they want to make sure that the custom DNS servers do not have any access directly to the internet for name resolution. So what they want to do, they would like to leverage it to forward to other dedicated, like external DNS servers in a dedicated Azure VNet, which may use that internet DNS as a forwarded and root hint as a backup. So they can actually go granular on that security point of view. And then they might actually just use it for the on-premises. Like, let's say that, some scenario that a customer can use it for on-premises that is going to be, identical with their on-premises, DNS resolution requirements using that Azure, as the DNS server as forwarder. So basically, there are two ways to use that. But again, it's actually just growing. We are getting more and more customer use cases. And hopefully in the next sessions, we can provide you with some more details on how customers use this technology in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one of the examples is actually integrating with SAP RISE, because this becomes quite complicated, because SAP RISE is not managed by SAP, or is not managed by the customers. It's managed by the SAP. So therefore, SAP comes up with their own standard architectures and designs, and customers normally cannot influence that. So that SAP provides to the customers some requirements to delegate a zone for SAP RISE environment, DNS zone, I mean. And this is a prerequisite from the from SAP, and those systems are managed by SAP Enterprise Cloud Services. And on this diagram, you see that this is all grayed out. And SAP says that they're using custom DNS for their virtual networks, for their RISE deployments, and their custom DNS actually are represented by a DNS cluster based on Linux. It is bind. So therefore, all customers have to live with that and have to integrate with that. So, and we see that a lot of customers struggling to understand this design and how to integrate with that. So therefore, this white paper explains the basics of that. And
nice.
Of course, SAP can elaborate and explain much more and provide prerequisites and checklists to fulfill on how to integrate with their DNS environments when it comes to the RISE implementation. But basically, what SAP is asking for is to delegate a zone For instance, if there is a second level domain name of the company is contoso.com, then SAP probably will ask to delegate a zone of ECS or rise.contoso.com. And all the virtual machines from SAP RISE will be deployed into this subdomain. So, and this subdomain has to be integrated into the customer's on-premise environment. And how it's normally done, that SAP uses a technology which is called DNS zone transfer. And DNS zone transfer is a feature on replicating DNS entries from one DNS service to another DNS service. So meaning that all the entries which are created here in RISE environment will be replicated in this scenario to on-premise DNS service. So, but there is the customers need to ensure that there is connectivity and an express route connectivity, and then peering into RISE, and then there is a routing between RISE and DNS service. So this is the standard scenario. But then it comes a question that how to leverage the best of both worlds and to integrate it simultaneously. So the customers often not only running SAP RISE on Azure, but also native workloads on Azure. So, and for native workloads on Azure, following best practices and features and cool features from Azure Private Resolvers and Azure Private Zones. So then it comes a question how to integrate between DNS, custom DNS in RISE and private DNS zones for non-RISE environments. So there is, then we come to this diagram, and with the support of conditional forwarding feature of DNS private resolver or a custom DNS servers which might be deployed in Hub VNet. So this is doable. So DNS zone transfer in this case is not mandatory anymore, because with conditional forwarding, entries from on-prem or from non-RISE environments could be forwarded to in DNS cluster in RISE and other way around. So there are multiple different other deviations of this setup. Everything is, as Evren mentioned, depends on the particular customer architecture, already existing architecture, and prerequisites and requirements. This is just one of the examples that in this case, on this diagram, customer uses custom DNS servers in Azure as well. So therefore, DNS zone transfer is possible from RISE to a DNS server which is deployed in the Hub VNet in Azure. But if it was the DNS private zone, then there is no zone transfer to the DNS private resolver, because private resolver doesn't support zone transfer. It supports conditional forwarding. But still, if a customer wants to reduce the DNS traffic between on-premise and RISE deployments, then zone transfer is still possible to achieve between RISE and on-premise DNS service. So therefore, we are providing with this white paper an art of possible and some examples of how the DNS integration in the hybrid scenarios could be achieved, but it's not prescriptive. That's just art of possible. All of the customers are different, all scenarios are different, and you could see also the flow from this article as well, that it started very simple, where when one virtual machine could just reach out to another virtual machine with a host name by Azure with support of Azure Provided DNS of doing nothing. And this final diagram of scenario 4 is quite complicated, frankly. And when I was trying to put my thoughts on this diagram, so that was not easy to kind of implement and depict all the aspects of the complexity just on the simple diagram.
Yeah.
Yes, it's nice to see this.
And also from the security point of view, like as we know, like we can do lots of things on the traffic routing and forwarding using Azure DNS. So in the diagram that Konstantin was showing, that we have the Azure firewall, for example, so that customers can leverage it to allow themselves to define the network rules to allow or deny the traffic based on like source, destination, port, or the protocol. So basically, they can use disparate Azure solutions, not only Azure DNS. They can use the firewall, for example, Azure Firewall, that they can create rules to control that inbound and outbound, like the traffic, so they can be more granular on that one. They can even just apply the application rules, for example, so that they can allow or deny the traffic based on the FQDN, which Konstantin also mentioned earlier. They can even just do it on the URL. So this can help them control the access to specific websites, or it can be just the application. Then we got the option now to integrate with Azure Monitor. Basically, you can now integrating the you can now do the integration of the Azure Firewall with Azure Monitor, so that it can provide you with the visibility into the network activity and then security events if you want to get more granular. So basically, there are some customers, they even just want to leave NSG use, and then they would like to use Azure Firewall, for example. They can do some more granular work on that. So they're asking about the threat intelligence and premium features like TLS inspection, URL filtering, and IDPS. These are all available. So while we're actually just talking with the customer, addressing their needs for the DNS, and then how the traffic control is going to happen, we also just make sure that they understand while they're getting the DNS, they're actually just getting other disparate Microsoft solutions to augment their overall infrastructure investment on Azure. So we help them, in every angle. We're not necessarily just helping them with the DNS, but we also just go to the details, like NSGs, if they want to have some kind of recommendations from us on the multi-segmentation, they can deny all as default, and they can go granular. They can take a look at all the traffic patterns, and accordingly they can apply those rules, NSG rules per per environment, so that they can be more granular. So then this DNS is on top of that, is just going to be again providing them with the overall domain name resolution requirements, which are going to be sponsored, I will say, by Azure Microsoft Security Solution and Parameters. Is going to help.
And you have there, Evren, on a picture as an example, Azure DDoS component.
Exactly. Azure
which
DDoS
is an important part. I mean, somebody could attack the DDoS and flood it with a dummy request and bring it down.
So
right,
is just
an example.
Absolutely. The entire thing is DNS is all about DNS, right? Is the DNS based. All the DDoS attacks can actually just be DNS based. So this is the topic that I have been actually just covering. Is let's say that you have the application gateway, you have the Azure firewall, you're doing the source IP verification between, you got the route tables, everything is done. However, who's going to be supporting? I mean, this is the question that I always ask, and I want the audience to know. We have the Azure DNS, we have the firewall, we have application gateway. Who is going to protect them is the question. And then the question's answer is the Azure DDoS is going to do that. Azure DDoS is going to secure your security solutions. Azure DDoS is going to secure your traffic name resolution requirements. Without the DDoS, so that's why I'm asking everybody listening to us from customer side, just reach out to your Microsoft representative and then let them speak about Azure DDoS. Or you can actually just search Azure DDoS YouTube channel, and then you can be pointed to one of the previous sessions that I delivered. It's something that is still very, very important for any customer today. If they're not leveraging Azure DDoS, we're not even charging any more egress. Basically, during the attacks, egress is no longer just be part of the billing anymore, so customers are not even paying. So we are also providing the SLA with the Azure DDoS. So network level protection, infrastructure level protection. So these are all available. So that's why it is so important to actually just surround all this technology with Azure DDoS. So then everything is going to be more meaningful. So thank you, Goran, for reminding it.
It's a goodies from out of the box which are coming, and I always love those. I mean, it's really cloud services. It's becoming, even those with SAP, it's a lot of box solution, but many of those surrounding components are becoming cloud services, and this is really a huge help for the overall reduction of the management efforts, as well and higher reliability of the whole services. Right? It's excellent. Yeah, that's always I'm looking for it when I'm seeing an updates in different directions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, but that was again really great, and Konstantin, it was nice to see how we start with a fairly easy DNS configuration, then it gets more and more complex.
Yeah.
But actually also what you then said, Evren, that if you have this set up in a good way, then there are so many benefits, like getting all these other Azure services that can rely then on this DNS configuration, so that customers can really get a lot out of it. I fully understand that it is fairly complex, or it can become fairly complex, but that's why we have you guys, so you can help the customers with all these complicated DNS and security configurations in the end.
Yeah, understanding customers' requirements is actually the key. Basically, during the initial conversations that we ask them about what their requirements are so we can align the right solution to address their needs is what we do. It really helps us.
Cool. Well, thank you so much to both of you. Konstantin, it has been almost 3 years since you were on the show, so I think next time we need to make sure that you come more frequently, so that it's not yet 3 years again.
But you need to produce more white papers, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, if I had more time, exactly.
Yeah. No, but thank you so much. It was really fantastic to have both of you on the show again, and I'm really looking forward to having you again in the future. Maybe not only about DNS, maybe about some other topics as well. So let's see.
Exactly. Yeah, we
Thanks
got lots of solutions.
Perfect.
Yeah, lots of solutions, and I think we can build on top of that. Yeah, thank you very much.
Exactly.
Super.
Sounds good.
Thank you guys.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.